When you think of Clemson football, what position do you think of? What's the great position Clemson has, or great couple of positions? For me, a lot of people say wide receiver, but that's maybe the fourth one I would go to. I would go to cornerback and then probably defensive tackle, maybe defensive end, but defensive tackle would be very, very high on the list. And last year, Clemson's defensive tackles were solid. They were decent, but they were not the super elite, dominant level that we've expected. You expect a team like Wake Forest, even when they were really good with Sam Hartman, they'd be running their slow mesh, and it just would not work. Their whole game plan would just totally fail against Clemson because they would just collapse their offensive line. And that's sort of what you sort of expect from Clemson in the ACC play, is that the defensive tackles just destroy it. That's sort of how it always worked. Once Brent Venables figured out Paul Johnson's Georgia Tech triple option, just collapse the middle, take away the dive, and they have nothing. That's what we've become used to. Last year wasn't quite to that standard, although I won't say it was bad. It was still decent, but not dominant. So in 2024, Peyton Page led Clemson defensive tackles and snaps. He had over 500 snaps, and Peyton Page was perfectly good. He was rock solid. He was especially good against the run, which is what Clemson needed more than anything else. They were so bad against the run. He was actually good at it. So Peyton Page definitely gets a thumbs up. He's now gone. He's off the team. Stephiylan Green actually played a really big role, playing over 300 snaps, and he was well above average. He was probably one of the more pleasant surprises on the team. I thought he was really solid, and I think he'll play a big role moving forward. Trey Williams finally had a healthy season. He also played over 300 snaps, and he was adequate, but we've been kind of waiting for him to be healthy and have a breakout year. He was healthy, and he played, but was just okay. And then Capehart, Demonte Capehart played about 250 snaps, and he was pretty good, but he wasn't the superstar that a lot of people sort of hyped him to be prior to the year. He's back for an extra season now. So Peyton Page and Trey Williams are gone, meaning over 800 snaps have to be replaced out of a group that was already not dominant. So are they going to be worse? That's the question here, and we're going to dive in. Hey, if you enjoyed this content, help out this channel by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Subscribing costs you nothing, obligates you to nothing, but it helps boost this video up in your feed and other people's feeds, helps it grow, helps me keep this from being cluttered with ads. We just have our one sponsor, ReadyVets, who really helps us out. So if you could do that, it would help out the channel a great deal. I really appreciate it. So Clemson loses all that. How can they get better? I think the first one is obvious. Peter Woods moves back from defensive end to defensive tackle. He played there the latter half of last season, but moving him was a pretty big mistake. Hurt the defensive tackle group, but it didn't really solve the issue at defensive end either. He wasn't as good there as he was defensive tackle. You would now expect him to be a top 10 draft pick kind of player, kind of season, and then head off to the NFL after this year, which will be his true junior year. So that is a huge part, the biggest part, if we're honest. And then Demonte Capehart, he's a super senior now, and we've seen his moments of dominance, but he hasn't been healthy consistently, hasn't been great consistently. He did not play in the spring game. He had surgery right before the spring game and had a walking boot on his left foot. So I don't know how much you expect from him right off the bat. I think maybe later in the year you do see him have some moments of excellence, but I don't think you feel great about him being a dominant starter all season, at least given that injury. So there's three guys. You got Woods, who you feel great about, Green, who at least I feel very good about, and Capehart, who's an X factor. If he's healthy, could be very good. Definitely need one more. I think that comes in the form of true freshman Amare Adams. Amare Adams is 6'4", 285 pounds, 5-star. Everyone wanted him. Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia. He's the gem on the defensive side of this class. Really makes the 2025 class, at least from the defensive side. So I think he immediately gets into the rotation, not necessarily as a starter, but one of the first two guys off the bench, especially if Capehart is hurt. I think he sees maybe 300 snaps. As a true freshman, I think that you see him get a big, big role. So those are sort of your first four if they're healthy. Defensive tackle is a spot where players do get dinged up, so they will probably go beyond that at least at some point. So those are your core four, I would say, with Peter Woods, Green, Capehart, and Amare Adams. Amare Adams, again, true freshman, so there's a little bit of a guess and projection, but at least the chatter out of spring ball was that he was excellent and really looked the part, really looked years ahead of where you'd expect a true freshman to be. So I feel good about saying that's the first four. Then you go beyond that, And this is a spot, maybe unlike defensive end, where defensive end, I love the two starters. Here, I like the two starters. I like the first four, but this depth behind that as you go deeper is still actually pretty good. So you go beyond those first four. You got Vic Burley, who's someone who's a highly rated four-star out of Warner Robins near Macon, Georgia. All the major programs wanted him. He only had 100 snaps last year, but I think there's a chance that he has a breakout year this year. He's a little further down the depth chart, but I think he's someone that could pop if Clemson needs him. Then you've got two redshirt freshmen who, at least one I'm pretty high on. I'm high on Champ Thompson out of Norcross, Georgia, in a northeast Atlanta suburb. He actually played defensive end and defensive tackle in high school, but he's a big guy, 6'3", 290. I mean, he's definitely a defensive tackle, but he's more the Christian Wilkins style than the Dexter Lawrence style of defensive tackle. He has some speed. He's fleet of foot. You see him sort of, I call it knife through, turn the shoulder and slip through, and finish plays because he is decently fast for that position. A guy who played defensive end, defensive tackle, defensive end and tight end. I mean, now playing defensive tackle, but the appropriate size. So I like him. I think he's another guy who you could see pop, right? And then Heaven Brown-Schuler is 25 pounds bigger at the same height, and he is more of the mold of Dexter Lawrence. I don't know how ready he is. And for neither of these guys, I don't mean to put the Power Rangers, Dexter Lawrence, Christian Wilkins sort of expectations on them. I'm just saying that's sort of the mold they're in. But Heaven Brown-Schuler is another guy who's a pretty big prospect. And now as a redshirt freshman, you could see him possibly play a role. That's getting pretty far into the depth, and I still feel pretty good about it. So I really like the depth here. I like the superstar power at Peter Woods. I'm a big fan of Stephiylan Green. Was really impressed with him last year. I know a lot of people love Demonte Capehart. I'm a little worried about his health, but think he could, if he's healthy, be good. And then Amare Adams is a freshman to dream on, right? And then we talked about Burley, Thompson, Heaven Brown-Schuler. The last guy to mention is Mackie Williams-Lee, true freshman. I think he probably redshirts. He was committed to NC State, and then he flipped to Clemson. He's a little undersized at 6'2", 270. He had Oklahoma. He had Oklahoma as an offer. He had NC State, but beyond that, it was mostly smaller schools, like smaller conference schools, probably because of his size. I think he's not a guy who contributes right away, but has a good motor and could be a contributor down the line a couple years from now, probably a longer-term developmental prospect. And I think that's okay. I think Clemson's finding their way, getting elite guys like Amare Adams, developmental guys, and occasionally using the portal like they did with Will Held at defensive end. I think that's the formula, mixing, staying true to who Clemson is as a program with great recruiting, great development, and starting to use the portal just a little bit. This group did not need the portal at defensive tackle because they've got a lot of depth. I think this is a year you're basically adding a superstar and Peter Woods back to the room. Everyone else is more experienced. And I think this is a really strong group. So I think they get back to what they need to be for Clemson to make a run for a national championship appearance, at least. I think they're really good. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and go Tigers.